Imagine it's 2 a.m. in New York City. Silence surrounds the streets, but inside one person's mind, a storm rages. A young man named Ethan lies in bed. Sleep eludes him. The glow of his phone casts strange shadows across his tired face. Instagram photos scroll endlessly, but with each swipe, his mind grows heavier. Unrelenting questions swirl in his head. Am I good enough? What if I fail tomorrow? Does my life even have meaning? With every question, a weight of silent fear tightens in his chest. He smiles in front of friends, appearing confident, but inside, he battles an invisible monster. Its name, anxiety. Today, it spreads like an unseen epidemic. According to the American Mental Health Association, 1 in 5 adult Americans struggles with anxiety daily. Maybe in your family, office, or circle of friends, someone hides invisible pain behind a smile. But what if I told you that nearly 2,000 years ago, a philosopher created a philosophy that could still help calm anxiety today? His name was Seneca. His philosophy, Stoicism. He taught how we can control worry, fear, anger, everything within our minds, and how to strengthen our minds so that the chaos of the outside world cannot penetrate us. He once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Today, we will open the door to that ancient wisdom, see how Seneca's teachings can calm the restless modern mind, and learn how a philosophy from thousands of years ago can solve today's anxiety problems. Are you ready to join this journey? Let's begin. Morning in New York City. Car horns blare, crowds hustle, and towering skyscrapers cast shadows over restless streets. This city never sleeps, but behind the bustle, hidden struggles touch thousands of lives. Ethan, a 29-year-old marketing executive, looks sharp and stylish. His social media profile suggests everything is under control, but the reality inside is entirely different. For months, he's been battling constant anxiety. Sleep is scarce, his heart races unexpectedly, and his hands and feet go cold whenever a major presentation looms. The scariest part, he doesn't understand why. A single thought echoes in his mind. I am failing. One morning, Ethan boards the subway to the office. His eyes fall on an elderly man, white beard, worn coat, a book in hand. The man reads calmly, as if the chaos around him cannot touch his mind. Ethan wonders, how is this possible? So much noise, yet he is so calm. Curious, Ethan glimpses the book's cover, Letters from a Stoic, Seneca. At the office, the book's title stays in his mind. During lunch, he Googles Seneca Stoicism. A quote catches his eye, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The line strikes him deeply. He asks himself, am I really failing, or am I just spinning stories of failure in my mind? Here begins our journey into Seneca's teachings. Seneca was a Roman philosopher, politician, and writer, born in 4 BCE in Spain, but he spent much of his life in Rome. Even in his time, life was full of unrest, war, power struggles, fear of the unknown. People suffered anxiety then, just as we do now. Seneca said, "When we cannot control our thoughts, the outside world destroys our inner peace." To understand, let's see an example. Ethan has a major office presentation. He thinks, what if I say something wrong? Everyone will laugh. My boss will be angry. I'll lose my job. In reality, none of that happens. But his imagination has made it so frightening that his body reacts. Hands shake, sweat forms, heart races. This is the essence of Seneca's insight. We write our own stories of fear and become the characters trapped in them. One night, Ethan begins reading Seneca's book. A line hits him with transformative power. Our power is limited. We cannot control external events, but our reactions are always in our hands. He realizes his boss, the presentation, the economy, none of these are under his control. But he can control how he responds. And this is where his first step toward change begins. At this stage, let's hear a small story from Seneca. Once, his students asked, "Master, why are we so afraid of the future's uncertainty?" Seneca laughed and replied, "Because you prepare for a battle that may never happen." Through this, he taught that most of our anxiety is about things that might never happen, yet we suffer by imagining them. Ethan gradually starts applying this philosophy in his life. Before a presentation, he reminds himself, "I will only give my best effort. The rest is beyond my control." This eases some of his inner pressure. Changes are small at first, but with daily practice, he notices his mind slowly becoming calmer. Ethan gradually began applying Stoic philosophy to his life, but the core of his problem remained. He realized his anxiety didn't just come from external pressure, but from a hidden root deep within himself. One night, on his way home from the office, he sat on a bench in Central Park. Stars glittered overhead and silence surrounded him. He pulled out his phone and read a letter from Seneca, addressed to his friend Lucilius. In the letter, Seneca wrote, "We inflict unnecessary suffering upon ourselves when we fear a future that may never come. Live in the present, for the past is gone, and the future has not yet arrived." Reading this, Ethan felt as if his life had been trapped in an invisible time machine. He was either haunted by past mistakes or paralyzed by fear of future failures. But he was not truly living in the present. Jacob's story, Jacob, a successful startup founder in Texas, appeared outwardly accomplished, but inside, he trembled with fear every day. What if investors pull out? What if competitors beat me? Jacob's fears never actually materialized. Yet he lost every day in imaginary battles, suffering insomnia, panic attacks, and even physical illness. This is the fear Seneca called the imaginary monster. According to Seneca, 90% of human suffering arises from imagined fears. Ethan realized the root of his anxiety was distrust of the future. He kept imagining failure, forcing his body to respond physically. Seneca had said, "A man does not suffer real distress. He suffers the anticipation of distress that may never happen." One day at the office, Ethan drew a circle on a sheet of paper. Inside the circle, he wrote, "Within my control." Outside the circle, "Beyond my control." Inside the circle, he wrote, his effort, time management. His mindset. Outside the circle, he wrote, his boss's decisions, economic fluctuations, colleagues' behavior, uncertainty about the future. This is a core concept of Stoicism. Seneca and other Stoic philosophers taught, peace comes when you focus only on what is within your control. This exercise gradually calmed Ethan's mind. Whenever a major challenge arose, he would ask himself, is this within my control? If not, he let it go and focused only on controlling his reaction. Seneca himself faced terrifying situations. He was an advisor to the Roman Emperor Nero, who was unpredictable and cruel. One moment, Nero rewarded someone. The next, he could condemn that same person to death. Seneca knew his life was in daily danger, yet he never allowed fear to control his choices. Every morning he reminded himself, no matter what happens today, I will control only my thoughts and reactions. The rest I leave to fate. In this way, he maintained inner peace even amidst a restless Roman Empire. One day, Ethan had a major meeting at the office. He didn't panic like before. He focused solely on tasks within his control. The outcome exceeded his expectations. His boss praised him, and his colleagues were pleased. But the most important change happened inside him. For the first time, he had struck at the root of his fear. That night, Ethan opened Seneca's book again. He read a quote that became his guiding principle for the next stage of life. "The brave man is free. Fear is a chain. Courage is liberation." Now he understood. To overcome fear, he must step out of the world of imagination and face reality head-on. A snowy morning in New York City. Snowflakes fell outside the window, but inside Ethan's heart, another kind of storm was raging. Though he had applied some Stoic ideas and found a measure of peace, his anxiety had not disappeared. Some invisible fear still clung to him. This fear was death, a fear that hides in nearly every human heart, whether it's the fear of dying oneself or losing a loved one. That night, Ethan sat at his desk and opened Seneca's book. His eyes fell on a Latin phrase, memento mori, meaning, remember you will die one day. At first, the phrase frightened him. He thought, how will thinking about death reduce anxiety? Won't it make it worse? But as he read further, he realized that Seneca's teaching was actually a powerful way to confront the fear of death. Seneca said, "Death is not our greatest fear. It is the way we imagine death that causes suffering." He also said, "He who can embrace death finds true freedom." As he absorbed this lesson, Ethan's childhood memories surfaced. He was 12. His grandfather had suddenly fallen ill and was hospitalized. Ethan sat in the hospital corridor, crying. His grandfather held his hand and said, "Do not be afraid, Ethan. Everything in life will one day end, but death is not an enemy. It is only a door through which another journey begins." This memory shook Ethan deeply. He realized his fear of death was really a fear of the unknown. Michael, an American soldier. Michael, from Texas, faced death every day on the battlefield in Afghanistan. At first, every gunshot and explosion terrified him, but one quote from Seneca changed his life. "We move toward death every day, yet we forget to truly live." Remembering this, Michael prepared himself daily. He didn't deny death, he accepted it, and in doing so, he found peace. Now retired, Michael works as a mental health counselor, teaching soldiers how thoughts of death can become a source of inner strength. One Sunday morning, Ethan walked through Central Park. He noticed an elderly woman sitting under a tree, sipping coffee and feeding birds, radiating peace. He sat beside her and started a conversation. The woman smiled. "Every morning, I tell myself today could be my last day, not to fear it, but to be grateful, because every moment is a priceless gift." Hearing this, Ethan's eyes welled up. He realized that contemplating death is actually a key to understanding life's true value. When we accept death, every moment becomes infinitely precious. Following Seneca's guidance, Ethan began a simple nightly practice. Before going to bed, he would ask himself, if today were my last day, did I live it with pride? If the answer was no, he would reflect on how to live tomorrow better. This practice made him mindful of every moment of life. Seneca's life was itself a remarkable example of facing death. When Emperor Nero sentenced him to die, Seneca did not panic. He calmly bade farewell to his friends and said, "Death is not my enemy. It is merely a door that frees my soul." His courage and peace remain an inspiration to this day. One day, Ethan's boss called him into the office. The team had made a major mistake on a project, and his boss was furious. In the past, Ethan would have panicked, but this time he was calm inside. He reminded himself, "I've done my best. Even if today were my last, why waste it in fear?" His calm confidence surprised his boss, and gradually, everyone at work began seeing him in a new light. Seneca's lesson here was clear. To overcome fear is to accept death. Once we embrace death, nothing else can frighten us. Ethan woke up in the morning. No sun outside, the sky was gray. Notifications were popping up one by one on his phone. A major mistake had been discovered in a company project. Worst of all, his boss was in a terrible mood. His heart raced. Breathing felt difficult. In his mind, one thought repeated, "It's all over. I failed." Ethan sat at his desk. He closed his eyes and took several deep breaths. He recalled Seneca's words. "There is no use in being upset about what lies beyond our control." He reminded himself, "I can only control my reaction. Everything else is in fate's hands." Eventually, his boss started yelling. Ethan didn't respond. He simply breathed deeply. His boss's anger seemed to fade into the air. In that moment, Ethan realized nothing could disturb his inner peace. Later that night, Ethan walked along the river in the city. Birds were silent, the water moved slowly. He thought, life's chaos, all the pressure. These were imaginary monsters. In truth, life is simple. Every moment is in our hands. We just live it or lose it. Silently, Ethan repeated another quote from Seneca. "Fear is only powerful when you create it yourself." He understood that today's crisis could not break him. It was merely testing his strength. No feeling could ever truly discourage him. The next day, Ethan arrived at the office. He tackled the project issues step by step. He remained calm throughout, every small action. Colleagues were surprised, his boss was amazed, but Ethan was serene. The storm inside him had finally settled. That night, Ethan sat by the window, gazing at the city lights. He realized that all of life's crises, big or small, exist only outside our control. When the mind is calm, everything becomes manageable. Ethan sat in his small apartment, a notebook by his side. Each day, he would write down one or two quotes and reflect deeply on their meaning. Today's quote, "Fear is only powerful when you give it space in your mind." Ethan read it over and over. At first, it seemed like just a sentence, but each time he read it, it resonated deeper within him. He asked himself, how often had he been trapped by his imagined fears? At work, with friends, even in small life decisions. Was it really a real problem, or just the clutter of his own thoughts? Within 2 days, Ethan was assigned a major project. No sudden panic, no shaking hands, no sweat like before. For a moment, he paused and told himself, "I am not giving in to fear. I will simply do my work." He carried the quote with him through every step. The result? For the first time, he saw fear could not harm his work. Each small success taught him that a quote's power lies not just in knowing it, but in applying. The next day, another worry appeared. A large letter from the bank regarding a loan. Past experiences triggered fear, but he opened his notebook again. Today's quote, "Every event is beyond our control, but our response is always in our hands." Ethan felt his inner pressure ease. He developed a strategy to resolve the loan issue, calmly. The quote's power transformed fear into practical problem-solving. One afternoon, Ethan sat in a cafe with friends. They asked, "How do you stay so calm?" Ethan smiled. "I don't deny fear. I simply choose my response. Every quote reminds me, fear is imaginary clutter. Peace is in my hands." His friends were amazed. A small sentence, a simple quote. How could it make someone so strong? Ethan read another important quote. "We create our own suffering through imagined scenarios that may never happen." He realized that every uncertainty, work pressure, relationship conflicts, financial worries, was only a product of his own thoughts. For the first time, he understood that quotes don't just change thinking, they change life. That night, Ethan wrote in his notebook, "Every quote is a tool. When I remember it, it can break my fear, not just to read, but to apply in life." Gradually, he grasped the true meaning of each quote. Every small or large challenge no longer created fear. Each quote added strength, guiding his mind toward control. Ethan sat at his office desk. A new challenge awaited, a project where failure meant significant financial loss. In the past, his heart would have raced, but today he remained silent and calm. Opening his notebook, he read a quote, "Fear is only powerful when you give it space in your mind." He carried this thought with him through every action. No worry about the outcome. Focus on the work was his only duty. During the project, a colleague suddenly shouted at him. Previously, he would have panicked. But this time, he remained composed and responded calmly, rationally, and effectively. The project was completed successfully. In the evening, Ethan found another quote in his notebook. "We create our own suffering through imagined scenarios that may never happen." He realized that office stress, a coworker's behavior, financial uncertainty, all had been magnified by his imagination. Now he understood that fear is merely a reflection of thought. Ethan began applying this quote to all small life decisions. Whenever a challenge arose, he first focused only on what he could control. The rest, beyond his control, he did not waste energy worrying about. This small habit brought calmness to his daily life. Over coffee with a friend, Ethan said, "Every quote is not just to be read. It must be applied in life. I no longer let fear control me. In every step, I simply choose peace." His friend was amazed. How could simple sentences make a person so resilient? Ethan quietly smiled. The greatest lesson for him was clear. Quotes only give power when applied in real life. At night, Ethan sat by the window, watching the city lights. All the instability in his life, job, relationships, finances, could no longer scare him. Each quote gave him strength. Every step was guided by self-control. He had learned fear is simply the absence of response. Peace is the conscious choice of how to respond. Ethan woke up to the soft morning light. Even today, there was no unrest inside him. Facebook, emails, news, all had arrived, yet his mind remained calm. He opened his notebook and reflected on how the daily quotes had transformed his life. He recalled the first quote, "Fear is only powerful when you give it space in your mind." Now its meaning was deeper than ever. It wasn't just about handling office stress. It applied to relationships, finances, and society at large. Ethan spoke with his friend, Eliza. Eliza said, "Ethan, you've changed so much. How did this happen?" Ethan replied, "Every quote isn't just for reading. I applied them in life. I acknowledged fear but never let it rule me. At every step I chose peace. Now my anxiety cannot control me." The next quote in his notebook, "We create our own suffering through imagined scenarios that may never happen." Ethan smiled. Work pressures, misunderstandings with friends, uncertainties of life, all were reflections of his mind. Today, he understood. No situation is inherently powerful. Our response is what makes it so. A coworker joked at his expense, but this time Ethan didn't get angry. He simply said, "I will stay calm and do my work." This small act restored his inner peace. At the end of the day, Ethan wrote in his notebook, "Every quote is a tool. When I remember it, it can break my fear. Today, I understand. Fear is simply the absence of response. Peace means consciously choosing how to respond. That night, Ethan reflected on his mind. Every worry, work, relationships, finances, societal pressures could no longer dominate him. Stoicism was not just a theory, it was a powerful, practical cure for modern anxiety. From the first quote to today, his life had changed. Ethan smiled inwardly and said, "Today I understand. The root of all problems is fear. If you learn to control your responses, no situation can frighten you." He knew this lesson was not just for him. Anyone willing to embrace it could reduce their modern anxieties too. Ethan took a deep breath. Calm, strength, self-control, all were in his hands. Every moment was now his. Every quote had become part of his life. In this way, the philosophy of Stoicism had freed him from the anxieties of modern life.